This is Mike from Sober Sundays with Mike Mechow, and today we have a special guest. They call him Mikey Tats.
I'm not sure where the name came from.
So, Mike, I've met a lot of people in and out of programs, recovery, treatment centers, all types of stuff. You kind of stand out as having a dark, interesting history where the struggles of addiction have maybe paid a toll on you and affected you and your family. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like back in the day for you?
So what's up, guys? My name is Mike. I'm an addict. So addiction runs pretty deep in my family. My father was an addict. My brother's an addict. I have two sisters, and one of my sisters is an addict. It's everything from like addiction that we've seen to like other family members suffering because of the addiction of others. Suicides, jails, institutions, rehabs, prison. It definitely definitely ran rampant like in my more immediate family.
Would you say that the exposure to maybe drugs and alcohol kind of set you up for this? Did you choose this life? What happened?
So like my first experience with drugs and alcohol, when I was very young, between the ages of like 5 to 8, my father was very active in addiction. That was towards like the last years of his life, where it was more or less like around his bottom. And my mom was working 2 jobs. We didn't have a lot of money. We lived in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, in the projects, and then we moved during that time to Richmond Hill in Queens. So she was working 2 jobs and going to school at night. So she was really never around. My father would wake up late, and he was, I didn't go to school a lot of the times because he, woke up late, and I would go around and do his rounds with him, sort of thing. And sometimes he was buying drugs, sometimes he was selling drugs, sometimes he was using drugs. So I think I didn't really understand what was going on like at the time, but as I got older, I definitely did. And throughout all my life, yes, I did believe that my addiction was partially because of that. Now I have more of an understanding that like my reason for using drugs was it's to get out of myself. I'm not a person who's comfortable with myself or like in my skin.
So not being comfortable experiencing what's going on in the family, a way to get out of yourself was to do that very same thing?
At the time, yeah, because once I tried drinking was my first thing. Once I started drinking and I realized once I'm under the influence of something, I don't feel anything anymore. I don't feel the fear. I don't feel.
So alcohol worked for a period of time.
For a period of time, yes, it did.
Fun times?
So I thought. I can't lie. Yes, there were times where it was fun. There were times where using drugs was fun. Very few in between, but there were definitely times where I could look back and say, "Oh yeah, that night was a good night."
So this disease of addiction that you speak of, progressive illness. Can you tell us a little bit about the progression?
So I started drinking around 13. By the time I was 14, 15, that turned into dabbling with cocaine. Once I started using pills, a couple years after that, it went from like a like a mild progression to like pretty rapid. The pills lasted a long time, and then it moved on to stronger substances.
At any point were you thinking this is getting out of control? I don't want to go this route.
As soon as I started using the pills, and my day was spent, figuring out how many I had, how many I needed for the next day, where I was going to get the next one. That's when I started to realize like this might be a problem. And also there was a lot of older people that I hung out with, and you could look at some of these people and think that like these people are addicts, like these are not good people, and these people would say to me like, Mike, I think you have a problem.
So then what happened?
So the progression got worse, as it always does, and then I moved on to heroin. And then I moved on to using drugs through IV, and once that started, like that, I was just useless at that point. I was basically just pumping air if I was awake.
Was there warnings, concern from family members and friends?
Oh, from the age of maybe 16, there was definitely more concern from my mother.
And what did that do to you?
Absolutely nothing. I am a very selfish person, and I don't care what my actions cause other people, as long as I get what I need, as long as if I can make myself content and happy, I have very little care as to how anyone around me feels or what my actions cause them.
So things on the outside, perhaps falling apart. What's going on internally?
Internally, I can't even look in the mirror without being disgusted by like what I see. I do not feel like a good person. I feel very hopeless. I feel just like the person that I didn't want to be. I feel just like the person I didn't want to turn into, that I saw growing up, whether it be my siblings, my father, some of the people that I hung around with. But more than that, like completely hopeless. In my mind, like I was at a point where I wanted to stop so bad, and I was convinced that like I could not, and I truly can't, like on my own.
So somebody unfamiliar with this disease would say, Mike, why don't you just stop if you want to? But perhaps this is you wanting to stop, feeling like your life's unmanageable, is leading to more using. Was drugs like a solution to your issues?
Yes. A lot of people would say like, why can't you just stop? You have such a loving, mom. Later on in my life, I was in a pretty good home. Or even if like you had a nice girlfriend or you had a decent job, and they're like, I just don't understand why you can't stop. And like, I would if I could. Like for some reason, I just can't. I'm not capable of doing that. Sometimes just the fear of not making me stop was a reason for me to use.
All right, so tell us about some of the attempts to stop, including when you eventually did.
Most of my attempts were not of my doing. If I went to jail, that would seem like a good reason to stop, but it would not work for me. I went to rehab. That also did not work for me. I tried to detox on my own at home. That wouldn't only last until I could hold off, so long until I got sick. I tried using different substances and like mixing different substances together. I tried detoxing like mixing certain medications off the street.
Suboxone.
Suboxone was one of them. Definitely one of them.
So what happened?
Um,
I'm under the impression that you want to stop. Was your when you did stop, was this that you wanted it more than the other times, or did something different happen?
So around the time where I stopped, I had gotten out of jail April 18th of 2019, and I had a daughter who was days away from being born. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to see it. And honestly, at that point, I cared when I was in jail, but like I didn't really care. I remember sitting waiting to get my clothes, and I thought to myself, like, I'm gonna stay clean. I can't do this anymore. And I got out of jail. My mom picked me up. And I asked her to stop at there used to be a 7-Eleven on Hempstead Turnpike across the street from the jail in East Meadow. And I asked her to stop there so I could buy cigarettes. And I made a phone call to my dealer to pick up. By 12 o'clock that night, I had gone to someone's house down in Long Beach, and I had overdosed that night. And they actually Narcaned me. And just like that, like if you would have asked me when I was waiting to get my clothes if I was going to use again and put me on a lie detector test, I would have passed with flying colors. I meant it wholeheartedly. And just couldn't, I could not do it.
So every reason to not use.
And I used. And so, I went on a little run, and I completely had ran out of money. I had absolutely $0 in my pocket. And I ended up at my girlfriend at the time, who's, pregnant. I ended up back at her mother's house. And I remember going to bed this night thinking to myself, like, when I wake up in the morning, I have no idea what I'm going to do because I have no money. I have no way to get drugs, and I'm going to wake up really sick tomorrow. And sure enough, 5:30 that morning, she wakes me up and she's like, my water broke. And I was like, I don't know what you have to do, but seal it up, fix it. Like, no, this can't happen right now. And, we went to the hospital, and
so that didn't work.
That did not work. When the water breaks, it breaks. So we went to the hospital. She gave birth, and, through the middle of the day, which I almost missed because I went downstairs to get something out of my truck. And I fell asleep in my truck because I was so sick. And I woke up, I went back upstairs, and like she was just about to give birth. And I just remember that day, it was supposed to be like the most beautiful time in someone's life. Like you're about to have a child, or you're watching your first child be born, and it was miserable for me. It was only my mother and her mother at the hospital. So there was like no family there. Like the whole pregnancy, the whole everything, like drugs and the using just made everything unbearable. We didn't know each other for too long. It was not a healthy relationship. The parents weren't happy about us having a kid. Like we were in no position to have a child. And this day that was supposed to be like the most beautiful day in my life was like just completely miserable. So I was having a kid that I didn't want. I had no idea I was going to take care of it.
Their concerns were justified.
100% justified. And I had concerns too, but I also like didn't care about the concerns in like viewing it from like the child's thing. It was like these concerns would just seem like inconveniences to me. Very selfish. So we were sick. Well, I was sick in the hospital, and we had to stay at the hospital for I think it was an extra week to make sure that the baby was healthy and everything. And I don't know why. One of those nights I was in the hospital and you know, she woke up in the middle of the night and I was holding her. And I was like, I really got to try and like stop this. Like I can't keep the cycle going. Like it did with me and my dad and, you know, my other siblings. And I did stop using. I was able to get through the withdrawals. My mother told me that if I stayed clean, I could go back to the house. And I ended up doing that. I started working again. I ended up getting full custody of my daughter in that first year, with a lot of help from my mom. I was working again. I had a very good, you know, union job. I'm a steam fitter, and
So so stopping using, things are getting much better on the outside.
on the outside, 100%. On the outside, you could say that like I had everything that you would dream of having, like an active addiction. Like you would think that like these are the things that like if you could get these things, like you would be good.
So this disease being an internal condition, tell us a little bit about that.
So inside, my mind either obsessed about using the whole time, or I was obsessing about thinking about not obsessing about using. I was more miserable now than I had ever been in my life. Even, you know, I'd even remember my mom saying like, you know, like, I just don't understand. Like you have this wonderful life, you have your daughter, you're like, why can't you just be happy? She's like, you're more miserable now than you've ever been. And I had no answer. I had no idea why. But
So you stayed abstinent.
I stayed abstinent for around 12 months, I think it was, just white knuckling. Like every day, just the biggest mental fight of just trying to not use, and trying to like justify why I even was not using, because I'm miserable anyway. Like what's the point of this? Nothing on the outside that seemed so great really even mattered to me. It was almost like I didn't have those things because I didn't enjoy them. I didn't want them. I didn't care about them. And then, you know, my grandmother was sick with cancer at the time. She passed away September 17th of 2020. And she had pancreatic cancer. She was at, you know, my house with me and my mom. And I got a call from work. I got a call while I was at work that Thursday morning saying that you should probably come home. You know, she's not going to make it through the night. And this was the second family member that I had like watched die in bed. And I was very close with my grandmother. She was like, you know, my mother growing up. And she passed away that night. I was holding her hand when she passed. And I remember not even 5 minutes after she passed, my mother was in the room, my grandfather, and all my mom's sisters. And not even 5 minutes after they just watched their mom die, their first thought was they kind of all looked at me at the same time, and they were like, please don't go back out there. You know, we're here for you if you need anything, but just please don't go back out there. And like, I didn't really know what to do with myself because I was already so miserable, and like now my grandmother's dead. It was like 3:00 in the morning at this point, and I just showered and I was like, I'm just gonna go to work. My boss I remember like my boss in the morning was like, dude, like go home. And I was like, I can't, like just give me some work to do. Like I need to keep my mind busy. And like that's a lot of what I did that year was exactly that. It was just like flooding my mind with anything to keep me occupied.
But nothing is quite filling that void.
Absolutely not. There was nothing made me feel okay.
So what is it now?
Well,
Well, what happened?
So what happened was, I got in touch with other people that used to be in addiction who were no longer in addiction, and I got in touch with some of those people, and I wanted to know like how they were staying sober, and at first, you know, I would just kind of like, I would be around them, but I wasn't like, I wanted to see if just being around them was enough to stay sober.
In 12-step meetings, social settings, stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was not. I was hanging on by like a thread. And then finally I asked one person in particular if they could help me, and I was like willing to do whatever they suggested me to do. I was willing to do it. And one by one I started taking those suggestions, and
Would you say maybe around since that point you've actively tried to work a program of recovery?
yes.
So tell us what goes on inside now. Is there a difference between when you first stopped using and was abstinent and maybe today, which you work very hard for recovery?
So when I was abstinent, all these things that I had on the outside, they meant nothing to me. Today in my life, not many of those outside things have changed. They're still the same, and other than, you know, me opening a business in recovery, everything's the same. But like today, I just have so much fulfillment. When I wake up in the morning, I'm not upset that I woke up. I'm not worried about having to survive another day. Like when I wake up in the morning, I'm granted, when your alarm clock goes off at 4:30 in the morning, it's not exactly nice, but like once I'm up and about, like I'm excited to go about my day. And now like I'm able to be, you know, such a better father to my daughter, because I could be there emotionally and not just be there, but like want to be there emotionally. You know, I know that like if her school calls and she needs to be picked up, like I could be there. Or like if my family needs me to show up somewhere, like I could be there. And
It doesn't sound like that same selfish person you were explaining earlier.
no, that I can still be very selfish. But through praying every day and staying around other alcoholics who are seeking the same solution I am, that selfishness it gets lifted. And I have to say, like today, some of the best times in my recovery is when other addicts come to me and ask me for help, and I get to watch them. I get to watch their lives change. You know, the way mine did. It's cool when your life changes and when things get better for you, but when you get to see someone else have that same journey, it really, it means so much more.
All right, so I have two questions for you. Can you talk about a little bit about the relationship that you have today with your daughter? You want to talk a little bit about her?
Yeah. So my daughter's name is Faith. She is three years today. She's 3 years old. She's going to be 4 in April.
She's never really seen you.
My daughter, by the grace of my higher power, has never seen me high. She's never seen me drunk. I can't say she's ever seen me do anything that would be traumatic to her. She's very happy. She knows she's very loved. She's always smiling. I could see that like she has all the things in her childhood and like all the happy emotions that like I remember like I wanted to have. And I'm so glad that it's not like the other way around. She loves, I have a shop I build cars like on the side of my regular job, and like she loves to come down there and help me out, and she likes to get dirty, and she's a little rough around the edges, which is cool. But she's awesome, and like I remember when I first came around those 12-step programs, like there was somebody that I was working with closely at the time. They also had a child, and like I remember he was always available to go pick up his son or like be there for his son, and like I thought that was cool, but like what I really thought was cool was the fact that like he wanted to, because I could show up too if I wanted to, but like I didn't really want to, but like he wanted to. Like this made him happy. Like being of service for other people like actually made him happy, and like I understand why now. It's very fulfilling.
All right, last question. Can you tell us a little bit? You mentioned higher power. Can you tell us a little bit maybe about the resistance you had a little bit towards like somebody like you, maybe being spiritual, living spirituality? What does that mean for you?
So growing up, my grandmother was very religious. My mom was pretty religious too. They're Catholic. I was baptized Catholic too. I had zero belief in any type of God. To me, like no shot. You know, like some of the things that were going on in my life. You know, just seeing the physical abuse with my father and my mother, or things on the street that I had seen, or even just my family. You know, my father passed away when I was 8, and then there were some more abusive relationships that my mom got into after that. But then my mom met my stepdad, 2012 I think it was, and no, it was 2008, and then in 2014, you know, me and him got very close, and you know, he's like the father I always wanted, and in 2014 he got diagnosed with cancer. And he started chemo, and a week later we had to pull the plug. And at that point in my life, I was real certain that there's no way there's a God or any type of anything good up above, because like not only did you, and if there is, honestly, like I was not a fan of him, because in my mind, like, you know, he took my dad away from me, and now take my stepdad away from me, like, you know. So it was definitely something that, like, to me, no shot. One of those suggestions that I mentioned earlier was to pray, to make your own understanding of a type of God, and I had a lot of trouble doing that. So I was suggested to just, you know, keep it simple. Pray, to just be willing to pray to something. And that's exactly what I did, and day by day it grew from there.
Do you think some of the actions you take in reaching out and helping other people makes you feel somewhat more spiritual?
Yes, because like I said in the beginning, I'm selfish. I don't like to help other people. I like to help myself. And that's just the way I've lived my life for the majority of my life. And I pray for those things. I pray to want to help people, and when I ask for those things, I get afforded the situations where I can be of help for people.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks for having
Mikey
me.
Neck Tats, everybody.